the spouse, the kids, because the reality is they transition too,
Transition
and
as
they're
well.
going to have a harder time transitioning than the service member, right? So they get involved because when we transition and we do all these things, sometimes because we're in that moment, sometimes our family is an afterthought. And that's just the reality of it, right? Because the military is telling you, this is what you have to do. We have to still fulfill these orders, but we tend to forget that we also have a family that's transitioning with us. So they get involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Open Discussion Podcast. I have a special guest on here today, a U.S. Army veteran, Lindsay Kinslow, 13 years of military service in the U.S. Army. Thank God, not the Navy, right? But the Army, right? So over 13 years of military service, she is a strategic leader. But most importantly, that is very, very impressive. She's the founder of the Vet Reset Foundation. We're going to discuss that. Really, I'm very, very impressed with what you're doing with the veteran space, helping veterans, as they transition and reintegrate into the civilian sector. She'll work with communities and different organizations, really just to highlight and try to close the gap that veterans, as far as sustain and experience once they transition to the civilian service. Because a lot of folks sometimes don't understand what veterans face as they transition. So we're going to talk about your organization, what you're doing, how folks can learn about it, how they can contribute, but really on what you're doing to help veterans and as you transition yourself. So how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you for allowing me to be on your platform.
Nah, it means a lot to me. I just love to see veterans doing things in the community, really, to serve other veterans. I mean, it is a lot. It takes a special person, really, to decide on helping others. It says a lot about you. So I appreciate you coming on here today. It really means a lot to me. Now, as we jump into it, I really want to talk about your military service, right? Because I always tell folks, all 6 branches, if you count the Space Force.
Space Force.
We decided to serve for a different reason. I just want to explore you here over 13 years of active duty service. What was the motivation behind service in terms of you want to raise your hand and say I want to serve my country? So what was the overall decision you decided to serve?
Yeah, so when I decided to serve, I came in, they said I was old because I was already,
What?
I was like 20, turning 21. So they said I was old. But before I came in, I was in the medical field and, I just wanted something different. I wanted like structure, purpose. I wanted something bigger than myself. I'm from, a military town. So I went to the recruiter just on a whim and uh, took the pre ASVAB,
Very, yeah.
and he said, "Oh, you did phenomenal. Let's move it on to the next step." So I was like, "Oh, great." And then here, I went to the military, served 13 years, and I don't regret any of those decisions leading up to me going to basic trainings.
That's pretty cool. Did
Yeah.
you serve as a medical person because you had a medical background when you came in, or that you took a different?
Yeah, no, I was human resources. So
Why? Why you left from the medical side to HR?
I know my recruiter said the same thing. He said, "Man, you got over a 110. You can go any and do anything." And I
Yeah.
said, "I want to work in the office. I need AC. I need
That's
heat.
pretty smart.
I need a chair, desk, like all of these things." I had a whole requirement. And he said, "Fine." And he gave me human resources, but he left out a lot of other things that
Yeah, of
came
course.
came
That
with
keeps
it. But
along with it.
I did have an office. It did have AC at some.
That's pretty good, right? As their recruiter, you got to keep an eye on them, but they all means well.
Yeah.
So as you went through basic AIT, like a lot of us did, I want to talk about some significant things you experienced. For me, I had a lot of good moments in my career. One of them really was going to airborne school. A good friend of mine, and he was my squad leader. He went to airborne school, and then he claimed me. I followed him there, but he kind of encouraged me to go to airborne school and then gas station over Fort Bragg with 82nd Airborne Division. So that changed my whole trajectory. Was there any significant time in your career, your 13 plus years, you did something, you made a decision that you think that had a profound impact on your career?
Well, I think every decision that I made had an impact on my career. Um, but I will say that when I deployed, I had a bright idea that I was going to be CID. Oh,
What?
yeah.
Why
So,
CID though? Hold on for a sec. Why CID?
because that's my passion. My
Okay.
passion is, I know, like forensics and law enforcement and stuff. Um, I shadowed them the whole deployment. I put in my for I had to have a top secret clearance. So I did put in my for my clearance, but when we redeployed, I realized that CID was not for me. So,
What's in it?
but it landed me back in the DC area because that's where I'm from. Um, working in that like in within the agencies, that really was significant in my career. I saw the military, um, and just in that community in a different light.
That's pretty cool. You talk about the deployment. You can call me somewhat crazy, but for some reason, while I was deployed, I felt real comfortable being deployed. I don't
Right.
know why. I don't know if you experience it, right? When you deploy, you're there, you have a mission to go to. I mean,
Yes.
it's like it was just something. How would you describe your overall deployment and how was it for you though?
Well, I'll be real open and candid here. You don't come back who you were
Yeah,
when you went, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself, like what your limits, right? You push those limits down there. My deployment was life changing in a lot of ways. But to what you were saying, when you deploy, you have a mission. Your day is this is what I'm doing, right? You're regimented, you have a schedule. It's just so I will say that my deployment was um it actually was pretty. I know it sounds crazy, but actually was pretty good. Like
that's
overall,
good.
I learned a lot. I deployed with G1 for ID. So I actually worked with the MWR department as well and flew the entertainment around Iraq.
That's
So I
amazing.
was able to go in the different fobs and stuff and cops and see where like how everyone else was living,
Yeah,
right? And it really made me thankful when I went back to my base.
that's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, when we first deployed to Iraq, and we used to go down to Bayab, the airport, once in a while, just to get some things. And we were kind of pissed off because we was out there in Baghdad itself, different places in Baghdad, doing operations, missions, and patrols and stuff like that. Sometimes eating MRE, sometimes eating other Murmansk. And we go down to Bayard, them boys got Burger King, the chow is great. Man, I used to be real, real pissed off. What's going on over here, but it's not the fault of their own. So that's part of deployment, right? But thanks for your service, really. And I didn't say that earlier, and you are absolutely right. When you deploy, no matter what you do when you deploy, just you being forward deployed can have a huge impact on you emotionally, mentally, physically. And it is a lot really to really face. And I appreciate for sharing that. During your military career, right? We always have folks that shape who we are as a person. Is there one or two people you believe that had a profound impact on you in terms of shaping you as a leader or as a person, or just being as a human being who you'd be like, man, yeah, he or she had a profound impact on me. And what was that like?
I had several because you take the good and the bad and you use that to shape and mold the leader that you want to be or the leader that you want standing before you. But I would say my first supervisor, saw him first class Copeland. We still keep in touch, but he definitely he was straight up about, like what this journey was going to look like in the military. And I remember he was like telling me what to do. And I said, look, what do I have to do so I don't have to listen to you anymore? And he was like, now we talking. Now we're talking.
Now
He
we
was
talking,
like,
right?
so he sat me down and we went, oh, and this was when he first got there. So I was there before him in Germany. So he sat me down and he went over my ERB and he showed me course correspondence courses, talk to me about going to college, right? And so I was able to utilize that information and get promoted. For I was human resources, and for my MOS, I did get promoted pretty fast, and that was because he set me on that path of correspondence courses. I was going to in-person college, within my first year of being in the military.
That's pretty cool though, because that's one thing that I always give the military credit when it comes to just leadership, right? People care about you. And sometimes folks can see things in you may not see in yourself, to where they try to help you and try to put you in a wholly different path to where you can be somebody very, very important. I'm saying you're not before, but just it takes a lot for someone to really invest their time into you. And,
Yes,
and you may not see that now. So as you transition out of the military, looking back, and comparing, the military, your time in service to now, because you still within the veteran community and military, whatever. What are some things you've been hearing? Because we always argue in terms of, the folks that are serving now, they kind of soft, they got it easy. We got it harder when we were serving. What have you been hearing? How will you evaluate that from your perspective, in terms of what we have now serving and compared to when you came in, how things was like?
I'm shocked.
Why are you shocked?
I'm just shocked at the freedom that they have in basic
Yeah.
training and AIT, um,
Their phones and all kind of stuff.
cell phones, I'm like, what do you mean he calls you at
Mhm.
night? Or what do you mean she calls you at
What?
night, right?
We have a payphone. You gotta get in line to use the payphone.
Yeah, you had to, turn your back while somebody was on the phone and all of
Yeah,
those things. And, I'm shocked, but also, it is different times. Different times. I say, I don't even know. Part of me is like, these are good things. And another part is like, well, where do you, where's the discipline come in? Because
yeah.
I had to be, I came in right before, after 9/11, right before
Mm,
Iraq. Actually, I was in basic training when we invaded Iraq. And
man.
my drill sergeant at the time was like, look to your left, look to your right, tell them goodbye because you won't see them, right? And that was, we literally straightened up from that day, right? It was
Yeah,
just basically like, if you don't pay attention, you're gonna go down range and you're not gonna come back. And so from that day forward, we actually straightened up and paid attention. So I'm like, if you have the cell phones and just can do whatever in basic training, where when do you get that discipline? So that's my only thing. And so I see some people that go through basic training, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, at what point do they get that discipline that we got
yeah.
when we were in basic training in
Basic training,
AIT?
right? Yeah, that's the nature of the U.S. military. It's changing constantly, because it is a combination of our society, right? When you and I was growing up, we didn't have the cell phone, the video games, and all those things, no Twitter and whatever. So you had to make sure you talking to people directly. Now you have those young guys, men and women, going in with a different mindset.
Yes.
So do we have to adjust to who they are? Because the standard still remains the same. It's just about how we operate, to make sure that everything is good. And I'm hopeful, that we
Yes.
head in the right place. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
So we had to make a decision, to serve, but then we also have to make a decision to transition.
Yeah.
We all have to make that decision. Sooner or later, you're going to say, some I'm going to have to stay and do 30, or I'm going to transition. How was that for you? What was your, because you there 13 plus years and you transition, you don't have to go through any kind of mean detail, but what was it for you to decide that, this is time for me to transition?
Yep. So I will go into detail because that kind of is
Okay.
the basis of why I got into advocacy. So
Got you.
mine was a little different. And I always say this was the best decision I never made.
These 42 offers, the 42, 42, 42s.
Well, I med boarded. So,
Oh, okay.
yep.
Okay.
So my disc ruptured, and that's a whole story in itself of how I went 10 years with my back like that. But my disc ruptured, and it led to a surgery. It was during that drawdown period. So, after a few months, they said, "Look, this is as much as you're going to rehab,
Yeah.
and you're not a total soldier." So,
So for folks, I'm trying to cut you off. For folks who don't understand in terms of mayor board,
yes,
correct me if I'm wrong. Is the army had decided based on medical condition or based on whatever the case may be, you may not be fit medically, right, to keep serving. That's
that is
if I'm
correct.
not okay. Okay,
That
yeah,
is
all right.
correct. Yes. And so my transition looked a little different. As I mentioned before, I transitioned out of Germany, which made it even more stressful because you didn't have that support that you do in the States. I literally had to navigate my own transition. And through that, that's this can't happen, right? Like, what did the veterans go through before me? And what are these service members going to go through after me? Which led me to, being a veteran advocate.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because like you, I transitioned out of Germany to some extent, really. I did my first phase and I came back to the States and completed everything here. During COVID, it was pretty
Oh,
hectic, right?
yes.
Very, very challenging being overseas, but also in the midst of COVID. How would you describe your transition, right? Because everyone experienced transition differently. Some folks are fully prepared, and some folks like me was not fully prepared. And it was a very challenging time for me because I did not prepare properly, not because the army did not prepare me, because I did not prepare myself properly, because I was convinced 30 years was my goal. I was going to do 30 years no matter what. And I transitioned 23 years later. I decided to transition. It happens. You get up one day and you be like, something, I'm done, for different reasons. And how will you describe your transition? Because transition is not just, a physical transition. It's very, very emotional, very, very psychological as well.
Yes.
So what was your state of mind if you want to explain that to us, if you want to share that? How was it you transitioning, out of the military after serving 13 and plus years?
Yeah. It was difficult. It was difficult. I was literally, just like many others, dropped out here, right? Dropped out in the world to figure it out. And I had significant health issues. I had just had back surgery. So, untreated stuff from the military. And once you slow down, everything boom hits you, right? You're like, oh, I didn't realize my knee hurt that much, right?
Yeah.
Well, I had to figure out my own health care, right? So I had TRICARE, I have the VA. I don't know how to navigate either one. TRICARE here on base and all of these things. Oh, well, you're in retirement status. We can't see you. You're
Yeah.
30 days from, you know, your discharge. We can't see you. The VA, we can't see you because you're not a veteran yet. So I was in that space where I was just it was tough. I will say that. It was tough mentally, physically, and emotionally to transition like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry you have to go through that. That's what a lot of veterans face daily, really, as we transition. I try to advocate when I talk to veterans, so not just veterans, but just folks that are serving, be like, hey, man, you have to start planning your transition today. No matter if you decide to serve 30 years, 40, 50 years, whatever the case may be, because things can happen. And once you transition, man, you transition. Thanks for
That's
your
it.
service. We appreciate what you've done, but now you have to get out here and try to live a whole new different life because now you're in an operation environment for which you're not familiar with. Now you got how to navigate. But there are some resources and tools out here that veteran can use to really put them on a positive glide path, but you just don't have access to those information.
Right.
And I want to explore that because that's something you're very, very passionate about. First of all, your organization that you created. But the first question I want to ask you here is why? Why is it you decide to start, the Vet Reset, foundation? What was the motivation behind that? Is it based on your personal experience or some things are jacked up. I want to help and fix some things around here.
The things. So my own personal experience, I will say that I actually wrote in my undergrad the business plan, right? But I did not know it was going to be a transitional home and all of these things with resources. I didn't know back then that I was really gonna start the nonprofit or what it even looked like, really, because back then I wasn't even focused on getting out. But I have over a decade of experience in this space. I worked at Disabled American Veterans where I actually got my start. And so from that, and I was in the DC area, which is very, very busy. And so I was able to meet veterans from all walks of life, from World War 2 to, you know, like 20-year-olds, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that didn't, see combat. So just all walks of life. And I noticed that there were gaps. There's commonalities between, the 80-year-old and the 20-year-old, and that is that they didn't transition properly, right? The 80-year-old is still in the transition mode. It's still trying to, grab for resources or figure it out. So that's kind of why I started vet reset is because I saw the gaps, and there are a lot of them.
That's profound. So, what is the overall objective, right, of vet reset? I mean, if you think about it, if you meet somebody for the first time and trying to explain to them exactly what you're doing, what is the goal? What are you guys trying to accomplish? What's the overall objective that you guys are trying to really accomplish?
Yeah, so we help the veteran beyond the uniform, right? So that comes in many different ways, but the first one is our signature program. Well, let me back up. We're not just a nonprofit. We are a veteran reintegration system. So we actually also connect to these resources that are out here in the community that nobody knows about, right?
What's
And
about?
we all know that there's a great organizations out here, but how do you access them? That's always, a big question, especially for, you know, our age group who are working and all of these things. It's like, how do I get to them? So I actually bring them out to them. But what sets us apart is we don't focus on like the resume writing. A lot of, resources out here that'll help you how to navigate the resume, how to, prepare for interviews. I actually volunteer for hiring our
A hero.
heroes who I do that, right? But there's not a lot of organizations that focus on, you know, the mental aspects of transitioning, because if you don't mentally transition, you're not going to have an easy journey. And I know that from my own personal experiences. If you don't have that mental transition, you can't even grasp what the supervisor is saying at your first job because he's
Yeah,
foreign.
yeah,
We talk about being your true authentic self. What does that look like when I'm no longer Staff Sergeant Kinslow and I have to be Lindsay?
yeah,
Who is Lindsay? Right? We have hard work. Who is Lindsay? A lot of us go in when we're young. We don't know ourselves
mm,
before we go in, and we are shaped and molded to be the person that your service says that you're going to be. So when you leave, you're no longer that identity. So now who are you? So we talk about that because that's a hard transition in itself, right? How hard is it to say, "Oh, I'm not staff sergeant, or I'm not sergeant major, I'm Lindsay or I'm Samuel." That's hard, right? We talk about the financial stability because reality is a lot of us make more money when we get out than we do, when we're in. Where are you going to put that money? How do you set this up? How do you have a legacy for your family? What does that look like? How do you support yourself when you're waiting for your disability to kick in? When you're waiting for a job, when you're waiting for, your retirement check? What are you doing? So that's also why we like to catch the service member 24 months prior to transition, so you have, that time period to actually focus on these things. And during that process, our program, the family is also involved. So we do
mhm,
a life plan, right? What does that look like? You get your friends involved, your neighbors, like anybody who's your support system, they get involved, the spouse, the kids, because the reality is they transition
you
too,
transition
and
as
they're
well.
going to have a harder time transitioning than the service member, right? So they get involved because when we transition and we do all these things, sometimes because we're in that moment, sometimes our family is an afterthought. And that's just the reality of it, right? Because the military is telling you, this is what you have to do. We have to still fulfill these orders, but we tend to forget that we also have a family that's transitioning with us. So they get involved. I
That's
have
amazing though, because we just all the things you just cover is something that I never considered really, as I said, when I was going through my transition process. You know, the goal
yeah,
here was just to get out, find a job and, whatever the case may be. There's so many other things that comes along with it that we really not don't do not consider. And I think one of the area that we kind of dropped the ball, as you just alluded to, is the issue of the family. I mean, if you have kids, you have a spouse, and it is a huge, huge process as well. And it's a lot on them as to
it
go through
is.
transition.
It is.
You know, you been in the space for now, working over the DAV, helping veterans with claims and resume and to transition, just the overall reintegration process. What are some mistakes you think that veterans sometimes make as we transition? And what are some recommendations you can give to folks who are con- contemplating transition or just not planning at all, but things you have seen from your vantage point and said, man, these are the things I've seen a lot that veterans make in terms of challenges and mistakes.
Well, one of them is saying that you don't need assistance, you don't need help, right? The military puts that in your mind that you have to be strong. If you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. Actually, it's a sign of strength. To ask for help is a sign of strength, right?
That's
And we're not asking for a hand out, we're asking for a hand up because many of us transition and we're successful in our careers, yeah, right? We want to continue that success, but we don't have the right tools in place to be successful because once you're transition, that's it. You don't have that safety net anymore. You don't have these resources that you had right in front of your face. You have to go out and get them, and they're not easy to find. I spent the whole year before I worked looking for resources. Yes, my resource list is it's crazy. It's like
right. How important you think it is when the times when you talk about networking, right? Because you talk about those resources to really understand where it's at. Because service members are very resourceful, but at the end of the day, the military to some extent have spoiled us. Because everything is on the installation. You know exactly everything is there. You don't have to work too hard to get it. It's right there at your disposal. Now you transition to a different state, city, or different places. The matter is outside the U.S. Networking is something that I believe is very, very essential when you transition.
for
How
sure.
important it is for you opening a new business, transitioning, and trying to figure things out. How was networking to you, and why you think veterans or transition service members and spouses and family members should focusing on really harnessing that issue of network?
Yeah. So I will say networking is very important. You might not realize it when you're in, but when you get out, you're going to need those contacts. So actually learned how to network in the military, being human resources and then coming to the DC area. I had my own business cards and all of those things. So when I transitioned, I had to call these people that I worked with 4 years ago 7 years ago, to ask them, hey, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? What's next? Like, what does this look like? Right. And so it actually helped me, along the way to realize that, like, the feelings that I'm feeling are normal. Right. I'm not an alien because when you're not around or you don't check in with other people to make sure that what I'm experiencing this is normal, right? It makes you isolate a little bit more, right? Instead of coming out, you isolate a little bit more. So that's why I feel like networking is very, very important and it helps facilitate, your reintegration process.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you. Thanks for what you're doing, really, in terms of your organization, what the Vet Reset Foundation is doing. How can people get in contact with the organization if they want to learn more about it? The website, whatever the case may be. How can we get involved? How can folks support you, contribute in different ways as they see fit?
Yeah. So we are, I want to say we are grassroots. We are emerging nonprofit. So if we have several ways to get involved. One of the biggest ones is just joining our community of supporters. So what that looks like is, giving of your time to volunteer, right? We have things that you can volunteer virtually. You don't have to be in this area. We are actually building to be a national brand. So we aren't just going to be in Maryland. We're building. We have Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Virginia asking for this expansion. So we're building here to strengthen what we have here, our foundation, so we can duplicate and replicate this in various areas. So volunteers. Then we have monetary, you can give monetarily, just, supporting as a mentor. So we are I'm looking for mentors for other veterans so you can help them during that transition process. Um, and just sharing our mission. We have campaign going on right now that 20% of the proceeds does go back to women veterans, helping through put them fund them through our transition program. The organization is a women owned organization. So, of course, they're going to support the women veterans. So, that's what we have going on right now. You can reach us at info@vetresetfoundation.org. That is also our website, Vet Reset Foundation. We're out here just, educating, that's a big thing too. We have to educate because we're doing things different. So everybody's used to helping the veteran in crisis, and we are trying to help the veteran before they hit crisis.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. I'm gonna make sure I share those information as well here when I upload this recording. I really appreciate you. It always give me hope to see people like yourself who have served that came across a gap and recognize something that they can do to assist veterans because veterans go through a lot. Folks just don't understand. Veteran goes through a
Yes.
lot, not just from the homeless veteran issue or the veteran suicide and stuff like that. But veterans go through stuff emotionally, psychologically, the PTSD piece. I mean, it's a lot. It is a
Yes.
lot. And sometimes folks just don't understand. But you and your organization really are doing a real good job. And I just want to applaud you for doing that, really, in supporting veterans and their family members to say, hey, this is what we can provide for you folks. We're here to help. And I think that would make a huge impact as time progresses, as you expand nationally and potentially globally here when it comes to organizations. So I really
Yes.
appreciate you for that. Before I let you go here, I'm gonna give you some rapid fire questions because I'm not a fan of 42 office. So, but we're gonna keep this pretty. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. Two people you don't want to piss toward, right? And 92 to supply logistics and the 42 you don't want to piss them
Absolutely.
off. You get nothing done. Uh, if you were to looking back at your career, to change anything, in terms of your military career, what do you think would that be?
Hmm. Well, like I said, I had a pretty good career. I
That's good.
I would say maybe staying the whole 20 years. I could not change that. Yeah.
Advice you would give to yourself, a young, person coming in the military today, trying to serve. Any advice will you give to new recruit, service members that are coming in to serve?
Yeah. So I would say, you know, take everything that you're learning and that you've learned and put it in your what we call it our toolkit, everything. Because everything that you experience will shape and mold who you are today.
It's amazing. And my final question here, since you've been in the veteran space for a while, working over at DFV and just helping veterans, one, recommendation or advice you would share with veterans that transition, we all have to transition. They transition here from your vantage point, things that you've seen, so you would like to share with folks who are going through transition now or in the future.
Yep. So if you're still in, I'll say document everything. Go to the doctors, document everything, because if not, you're going to have a hard time when you get out, trying to get your benefits. And then I will say, get your benefits. People don't realize, they think, oh, I don't need it, but you do, right? Because also, when you think about benefits, everybody thinks about compensation. So I'll start there with the compensation. Well, that's almost like leaving a legacy, right? Because if something happens to you, it can transfer to your spouse, it can transfer to your kids. They have, the benefits aren't just for the veteran, it's also for your family members. So look into these benefits that they offer, federal, state, local, like what do they offer for yourself? And get them, find someone who can help you with the process. I know a lot of veterans say that you're too busy working and things like that, but you have to carve out that time to take care of yourself and your family.
Thanks for sharing that because, when I worked at the VA, one thing that I saw is a lot of veterans are somewhat reluctant, right, to file claims. Like you said, "Oh, I don't need it. Let somebody else get it." No, you earn it. File your claim, but
Yes, you earned it.
at least get some kind of as far as, the service in terms of healthcare service, to take care of you and your family
Yes.
members. So you earn it. And before I let you go here, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience in terms of folks who are serving and potentially to serve? Anything you want to share if I let you go?
Yeah, well, I will say that in terms of disability, this is something that people don't know is that at 70%, you can utilize everything that the VA has to offer. So, short term care, long term care, you never know when you need it. I'm not saying, but that should be an incentive to file your disability because you just never know. You don't want to leave that burden on your family to have to figure it out. And also make sure that your family or someone that you trust have your documents because far it's too often that I have to sit with a family member and try to find a DD 214. And after the service member is deceased, it's difficult to navigate that.
That's amazing. Well, again, I appreciate you. Thanks a lot for what you're doing. Thanks for what your organization is doing. But really, thanks for taking the time to come here and really share your story. But most important, what you're doing within the veteran space. I really, really appreciate you. Again, this is our platform. If you would like to come on anytime, please let me know. We would love to have you on here to really talk about what you're doing within the veteran space again. But really, I really appreciate you for what you're doing, who you are. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.